Just over 3 decades ago, an idea gave birth to Rally Australia. Let's have a look at the history and also what happened to the 2019 event. Winding the clock back to the mid-80s, and Australia was not part of the World Rally Championship. Our nearest event was our eastern neighbours, New Zealand. The rallies here were very different actually to those in Europe and some of the other parts of the world, and to bring a World Rally Championship event here, FISA, which then became the FIA, would need some convincing as well as some major changes to rallying to make it all work. A group of very dedicated people comprising some of the cornerstones of rallying in Western Australia was led by a Queenslander called Gary Connolly. They knew at the time that the American round, which was the Olympus Rally, was lagging a little bit in the World Rally Championship, and FISA were considering a replacement. Gary and his team asked exactly what FISA wanted and then set about delivering it to produce the event. In 1988, while I was actually still in primary school, the first Rally Australia was born and was ready to go. It was to be a round of the Asia Pacific Championship in that particular year and a pre-qualifier for the WRC. The idea was that the FISA officials would come and inspect the rally, and if all went well, it would then become a full-fledged WRC round in 1989. The very first Rally Australia was won in a Mazda 323 by Ingvar and Pearl Carlson. In '89, as expected, Rally Australia became a fully fledged round of the World Rally Championship. There was a very strong following of works teams in that year, much stronger than the previous year. From the very moment the green light was given for Rally Australia to be a WRC event, the organisers were innovating. They knew that they had to make it very attractive. After all, Australia was a long way from Europe, and they needed WRC teams to come and commit budgets to come here every year. So making it easy for the teams to enter and to compete, making the events well organised and enjoyable was the top list of priorities. The plan worked well, and soon it was a favourite for the WRC teams. During the first few years, the teams competed in all sorts of novelty stages to complement the forests and the ball bearing gravel. They ran on tarmac stages around the houses down in Bunbury, the Richmond Racecourse near Fremantle, which no longer exists now, and through Curtin University's car park. It was, however, the idea to have a spectator stage in the centre of Perth that really caught the imagination. Initially, a tarmac stage was convened in Northbridge around the restaurant district. That proved quite troublesome to set up and to close all the roads. So the following year, a dirt track sprang up on Langley Park on the foreshore of the Swan River. It couldn't have been a better idea. The Langley Park stage included a jump, a tunnel and a blast along Riverside Drive. The central hub for Rally Australia would become the benchmark for all of the other WRC events. Group A was maturing as a premier class of the WRC, and Rally Australia shared in its heyday. During the early to mid-90s, no less than 10 manufacturers competed at Perth's round. Toyota won twice with the Celica GT4, Lancia's Delta Integrale won 3 times with Subaru's Impreza, and Mitsubishi with the Evo winning 1 each. Ford used their specially developed Escort Cosworth, however they never made it to the podium. Rally Australia 1993 would be the event's darkest hour, when Peter Possumbourne and his co-driver Roger Freeth were tackling the Helena North stage in the event up near Mundaring. The works Subaru Legacy left the road and hit a tree. Bourne was uninjured in the crash, however unfortunately Freeth was not so lucky and succumbed to internal injuries a couple of hours later. And Rally Australia also organised a memorial that was erected nearby to the accident site, and that still exists today. Continuing in the chronology, 97 would see World Rally Cars enter Rally Australia. The new generation cars were a clever departure from the pure production-based machinery of Group A. It was Colin McRae and Nicky Grist that had most of the memorable moments that year. Going over the famous Bunnings jumps, the pair flew their Impreza WRC higher than anyone else. And they also won the rally and gave Nicky Grist a headache in the process. During the last few years of the 20th century, Rally Australia's reputation eclipsed most other WRC events. In 95 and 99, the World Rally teams voted the Perth event Rally of the Year. The honour was again bestowed to them in 2000. In the early years of the 21st century, some cracks started appearing. The media started to report a few stories that Perth was to lose the rally. Unfortunately, it seemed that there was some internal politics affecting what was seen as the best rally on the circuit. In late 2001, Gary Connolly was already looking at his exit strategy as he felt the writing was on the wall for the event. By the mid-2000s, the writing wasn't just on the wall, it was official. The newly elected Labor Party, straight after a state election, announced Rally Australia was due to be cancelled. They cited financial reasons for that, and given that the government creates the statistics, it's very hard to disprove. Realistically, it had very little to do with financial situations. It was the only out clause that the WA government had with the FIA in what was pretty much a watertight contract. Unfortunately, politics played their part, and despite huge amount of opposition and protests, the government refused to overturn the decision. 2005 was also memorable for another reason. Skoda had been running in the World Rally Championship for a few seasons and they hadn't had much success. They'd actually decided to withdraw from the World Rally Championship after Rally Australia in 2005. Colin McRae and Nicky Grist were at a loose end and Skoda invited them for a one-off drive in Perth. No one expected Skoda to do anything except make up the numbers, realistically. However, McRae and Grist had other ideas and got the Fabia into third place. They were making ground on second. It was looking good for a podium on Skoda's very last WRC event. Unfortunately, at the very last service of the rally, the team attempted a routine clutch change. It was a task that they tackled many times before and shouldn't have been a problem. Unfortunately, this time the mechanics had trouble getting the gearbox back in the car. It took much longer than the time allowed and Skoda was forced to retire. Such were the heroic efforts of the team and the drivers that all in the service park gave them a standing ovation. It was also to be McRae's last Rally Australia, however, no one at the time knew that. Despite all the trumpeting in 2005, Rally Australia actually ran again in 2006. For the WA government to exit their contract with the FIA, they had to find another state to take it on. They couldn't just drop the event and throw it away. There was no takers at the end of 2005, and so the WRC teams headed back to Western Australia one last time. The after party, however, was a very sombre affair. Perth had lost its big international event. In 2007, the Australian round of the WRC was supposed to relocate to Queensland. However, due to several issues to do with the event, it didn't run and it was dropped from the world calendar. Again, there was no event in 2008. Some wondered if we'd lost Rally Australia forever. In 2009, Rally Australia was reborn, this time in another state. And the area chosen was northern New South Wales. Now that area has a very strong green movement in it, and from the outset there was opposition to the rally. Sure enough, there were several protests, and come the rally, some residents and locals in the area started causing disruptions. Even worse, rocks were hurled at some of the rally cars, smashing some of the windows. It was causing a huge safety problem. Rally Australia went into rotation with Rally New Zealand in the WRC calendar. It was, when it returned in 2011, moved to Coffs Harbour. Several new innovations were tried with Coffs, including 2 super special stages. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out as they wanted and the rally sort of just fell into one of the regular events in the World Rally calendar. By 2018, there was some restlessness in the camp, particularly coming from some of the WRC teams. Toyota's team principal, Tommi Mäkinen, and former world champion himself, he made the comments, "What are we doing here? This is not the right place. I don't understand this. When I was competing, we were in Australia in Perth, and almost every year we had the rally voted as the best." Coffs Harbour has some brilliant roads and some spectacular scenery, no doubt. The questions and statements were more pointed at really the location. Again from Mäkinen, "We come here to the middle of nowhere and there is nobody watching. We have an incredible end to the year, but no atmosphere." Of course, the rally organisers were quick to counter with that. It came down to the suitability of roads and the amount of roads required to run a World Championship event. Unfortunately, around Sydney, there just aren't enough. Regardless, however, the organisers were looking at revising the route and seeing if they could at least get some stages closer to the city. Come mid-2019 and the bombshell was dropped. As of 2020, Rally Australia wouldn't be part of the World Championship calendar anymore, which is a real shame. Looks like Rally New Zealand is taking its place in the calendar, although that will run in September, and the final rally of the year will run in Japan in November. So then what happened to the 2019 Rally Australia? What should have been the final event of the 2019 WRC and Rally Australia's swan song? The short answer is the 2019 Kennard Tire Rally Australia was cancelled. Why? Well, it came down to something beyond anyone's control: natural disasters. Bushfires have been ravaging huge parts of New South Wales, and unfortunately the fires were just getting too close. Originally the organisers were looking at shortening the route and still running the rally. However, in the end it was a wise decision not to run the event, given that resources were stretched so thin, and then you'd be sending rally cars into a tinder-dry forest. So as it turns out, 2018 was the last Rally Australia, and certainly not the send-off that an event with such prestige and history deserves. And over 30 years, many people look back very fondly. Bringing a round of the World Rally Championship to Australia was no mean feat, and it was due to some very dedicated people and a lot of hard work that we got the rally here in the first place. The event brought a lot of people together in a way that many people on the outside don't understand. It was an adventure, an experience, and a community all wrapped into one. So let us hope that in the not too distant future, a round of the World Rally Championship returns to our shores. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and I'll catch you again soon. Cheers.